The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace as Catherine, the Princess of Wales, adjusted her elegant navy dress one final time. Today marked a significant milestone in the royal calendar, the annual state opening of Parliament ceremony. The weight of tradition pressed upon her shoulders as heavily as the sapphire tiara that would soon grace her head. Kate had been feeling unwell for weeks, but she had kept this secret locked away in her heart. The relentless schedule of royal duties, combined with the constant pressure of public scrutiny, had begun taking its toll. Each morning brought a new wave of dizziness that she fought to conceal behind her practiced smile. The palace doctors had recommended rest, but duty called louder than her body's desperate pleas for respite. William noticed the subtle changes in his wife's demeanor, the way she gripped the banister a moment too long when climbing stairs, how she would pause and take deeper breaths during their private conversations. Her usual radiant glow had dimmed to a concerning pallor that makeup could barely disguise. He had tried multiple times to convince her to postpone some engagements, but Kate's sense of responsibility ran deeper than any personal discomfort. The couple's children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, had been particularly energetic that week. Their school events, combined with their natural curiosity about their parents' royal duties, meant that Kate barely had a moment to herself. She would tuck them into bed each night, her heart full of love, but her body screaming for rest that never seemed to come. As the royal family prepared for the ceremony, Kate stood before her mirror in the palace dressing room. Her reflection showed a woman who had mastered the art of royal composure. But beneath the surface, storm clouds were gathering. Her lady-in-waiting, Sarah, noticed how Kate's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her jewelry box. The drive to the Palace of Westminster passed in a blur of waving crowds and camera flashes. Kate maintained her public smile, but William could see the strain in her eyes. He reached over and gently squeezed her hand, a silent gesture of support that spoke volumes about their deep connection. The warmth of his touch provided temporary comfort, but it couldn't chase away the growing fog that seemed to be clouding her thoughts. Upon arrival at Westminster, the couple was greeted by the usual fanfare. The ancient walls of the building seemed to echo with centuries of history, and Kate felt the weight of all those who had walked these halls before her. The ornate decorations and golden accents that usually filled her with pride today felt overwhelming, as if the very grandeur of the occasion was pressing down upon her chest. The rehearsal for the ceremony had been particularly demanding. Kate had to practice her walk, her posture, and her timing with military precision. Each step had to be perfect, each bow precisely angled. The choreography of royal protocol left no room for human weakness or fatigue. As she moved through the motions, her breathing became more labored, though she fought to keep it hidden from the watching staff. During the preparation, Kate found herself gripping door frames and chair backs more frequently. The ornate throne room, with its soaring ceilings and heavy atmosphere, felt increasingly suffocating. The very air seemed thick and hard to breathe, though she attributed it to nerves and the weight of the occasion. Her training in royal deportment had taught her to push through discomfort, and she drew upon every lesson learned. William's concern grew with each passing hour. He could read his wife like a favorite book, and every page told him something was seriously wrong. The way she would close her eyes for just a moment too long. How she would lean against walls when she thought no one was watching. The forced nature of her usually genuine laughter. All these signs painted a picture that filled him with growing alarm. The final preparations were a whirlwind of activity. Palace staff bustled around, ensuring every detail was perfect. Kate's dress was adjusted one last time, her makeup touched up, and her tiara secured with mathematical precision. But beneath all this royal splendor, a storm was brewing that no amount of protocol could prevent. As they made their way toward the throne room, Kate felt the world beginning to shift around her. The magnificent corridor, lined with portraits of monarchs past, seemed to stretch endlessly before her. Each step felt like walking through deep water, and the sound of her heels on the marble floor echoed strangely in her ears. The golden fixtures and elaborate tapestries began to blur at the edges of her vision. William walked beside her, maintaining the required distance for protocol while desperately wanting to offer more support. He could sense something was terribly wrong. But the demands of the ceremony meant he could only watch and worry. The ancient ritual they were about to perform had been carried out for centuries, but today it felt different, charged with an undercurrent of tension that made his stomach clench with anxiety. The throne room doors opened before them, revealing a sea of expectant faces. Members of Parliament, dignitaries, and court officials all rose in respect. The magnificent chamber, with its vaulted ceiling and stained glass windows, should have been a sight to inspire awe. Instead, for Kate, it became a kaleidoscope of spinning colors and echoing sounds that seemed to come from very far away. As they approached the thrones, Kate felt her knees beginning to weaken. The weight of her gown, which had felt manageable moments before, now seemed impossible to bear. Her vision tunneled, and the faces in the crowd became a blur of pink and formal attire. The very ground beneath her feet felt unsteady, as if the ancient stones of Westminster were shifting like sand. William sensed the change immediately. Years of marriage had created an almost telepathic connection between them, and every instinct screamed that Kate was in trouble. But they were locked in the machinery of royal protocol, surrounded by hundreds of watching eyes and the weight of centuries of tradition. The ceremony had to continue, even as his heart hammered with fear for his wife's well-being. The moment when everything changed came without warning. Kate had been fighting the growing darkness at the edges of her vision, drawing upon reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. But as they reached the final steps before their thrones, her body finally surrendered to the battle it had been fighting for weeks. The world tilted sideways, and she felt herself falling into a void that seemed to have no bottom. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as William watched his wife begin to sway. In that split second, all of his royal training, all of his years of protocol and proper behavior, meant nothing compared to the woman he loved who was clearly in distress. His reflexes, honed by years of military service and countless public appearances, kicked into action with lightning speed. Without hesitation, William abandoned his position in the ceremonial line and lunged forward. His strong arms encircled Kate just as her knees buckled completely. The gasps from the assembled crowd echoed through the ancient chamber, but William heard none of it. His entire world had narrowed to the precious burden in his arms and the terrifying pallor of his wife's face. Kate's body had gone completely limp, her usually perfect posture dissolved into helpless vulnerability. The weight of her elaborate gown and ceremonial jewelry made her seem even more fragile in William's arms. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, and her skin had taken on an alarming grayish tinge that sent waves of panic through his chest. But he held her securely, his military training allowing him to maintain his balance even as his heart raced with fear. The throne room erupted into controlled chaos. Palace security moved with practiced efficiency, creating a protective barrier around the royal couple, while medical personnel were summoned with urgent discretion. The archbishop, who had been preparing to continue the ceremony, stood frozen with his ceremonial texts, unsure whether to proceed or retreat. The entire machinery of state protocol ground to a halt as human concern overrode centuries of tradition. William gently lowered himself to one knee, bringing Kate closer to the ground while never letting her go. His voice, usually so controlled and measured in public, cracked with emotion as he whispered her name. The formal titles and royal addresses fell away, leaving only a husband desperately calling to his wife. His hands trembled slightly as he brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch infinitely gentle despite his own fear. The palace physician arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours to William. Dr. Matthews had served the royal family for over 2 decades and had seen his share of medical emergencies, but the sight of the Princess of Wales unconscious in her husband's arms was unlike anything in his experience. He quickly assessed her vital signs while William held her, refusing to move away even when protocol suggested he should give the doctor space. Kate's breathing gradually began to steady, though she remained unconscious. Her face, so pale moments before, started to regain some color as the medical team worked efficiently around her. William found himself studying every detail of her features, as if memorizing them could somehow will her back to consciousness. The worry lines around his eyes deepened as minutes passed without her awakening. The assembled dignitaries and officials maintained respectful silence, though whispers of concern rippled through the crowd like waves. Many had known Kate for years and had watched her grow into her royal role with grace and determination. Seeing her in such a vulnerable state affected everyone present, regardless of their position or title. The human drama unfolding before them transcended all political and ceremonial considerations. Gradually, Kate's eyelids began to flutter. The return to consciousness was slow and disorienting, like emerging from deep underwater. The first thing she became aware of was William's familiar scent and the warmth of his arms around her. His voice, speaking her name with infinite tenderness, served as an anchor pulling her back to the present moment. She tried to focus her vision, but the ornate ceiling above seemed to swim and shift. William felt the subtle change in her breathing and knew she was returning to him. Relief flooded through his system so powerfully that he had to blink back tears. He continued to speak softly to her, offering reassurance and love in equal measure. His hand found hers and squeezed gently, a gesture that communicated volumes without need for words. The connection between them, strengthened by years of marriage and partnership, served as a lifeline in this moment of crisis. As Kate's awareness returned more fully, embarrassment began to mix with her confusion. The realization that she had collapsed during such an important state occasion filled her with mortification. She could see concerned faces surrounding them and understood that her medical episode had become a very public event. Her first instinct was to apologize, to somehow minimize the disruption she had caused to the ancient ceremony. But William wouldn't hear of any apology. His eyes, usually so diplomatic and carefully controlled in public settings, blazed with protective intensity. He made it clear through both his words and his unwavering presence that her health was the only thing that mattered to him in that moment. The ceremony, the protocol, the expectations of others, all of it paled in comparison to his wife's well-being. Dr. Matthews completed his preliminary examination and recommended immediate transport to the palace medical wing for more comprehensive testing. Kate tried to protest, insisting she felt better and could continue with the ceremony, but both William and the doctor overruled her objections. The determination that usually served her so well in royal duties now worked against her as she struggled to accept that her body had limitations. The decision was made to postpone the state opening ceremony, a choice that hadn't been necessary in decades. The announcement was handled with utmost discretion, but the news would inevitably reach the public and media within hours. William knew this would trigger intense scrutiny and speculation, but protecting Kate took absolute priority over managing public perception or media narratives. As they prepared to leave the throne room, William helped Kate to her feet with infinite care. She leaned heavily against him, still feeling unsteady, but determined to walk out under her own power. The assembled crowd watched respectfully as the couple made their slow progress toward the exit, their love and mutual support evident in every careful step they took together. The walk back through the corridors of Westminster felt entirely different from their entrance just hours before. Where there had been pageantry and ceremony, now there was quiet concern and gentle support. Palace staff lined their route, offering silent encouragement and genuine worry for their beloved princess. The ornate surroundings that had seemed overwhelming before now provided a sense of protection and shelter. William's arm remained securely around Kate's waist throughout their exit, his strength literally and figuratively supporting her through this difficult moment. His military bearing served him well as he managed to project calm authority while internally wrestling with fear and concern. Every few steps he would glance at her face, checking for signs of distress or renewed weakness. The royal car waited discreetly at a side entrance, away from the main crowds and media presence. William helped Kate into the vehicle with the same tender care he had shown throughout the ordeal. As they settled into the familiar comfort of their private space, Kate finally allowed herself to acknowledge how frightened she had been. The walls she had built to maintain her public composure began to crumble in the safety of her husband's presence. During the quiet ride back to Buckingham Palace, Kate rested her head against William's shoulder while he held her close. The events of the day had stripped away all pretense and protocol, leaving only the essential truth of their partnership. In sickness and in health, in public triumph and private struggle, they faced everything together. The vows they had spoken years before had never felt more real or more important than in this moment of vulnerability and love. The private medical wing of Buckingham Palace became a sanctuary of healing in the days following Kate's collapse. The sterile white walls and state-of-the-art equipment provided a stark contrast to the ornate grandeur of the throne room where everything had changed. William had barely left Kate's side since the incident, transforming from a formal prince into a devoted husband whose only concern was his wife's recovery. Dr. Matthews and his team had conducted extensive tests, revealing that Kate's collapse resulted from a combination of exhaustion, dehydration, and what they diplomatically termed accumulated stress. The relentless pace of royal duties, combined with her natural tendency to put everyone else's needs before her own, had finally overwhelmed her system. The diagnosis was both a relief and a wake-up call for the entire royal household. Kate struggled with accepting the forced rest that her recovery demanded. Years of royal training had taught her that duty came before personal comfort, that the crown's obligations superseded individual needs. But William stood firm in his protection of her health, working with palace officials to clear her schedule for the foreseeable future. His determination to prioritize her well-being over public expectations marked a significant shift in how they approached their royal responsibilities. The children's reactions to their mother's illness provided both challenge and comfort during the recovery period. George, now old enough to understand the gravity of the situation, appointed himself Kate's chief guardian, bringing her books and staying close whenever possible. Charlotte created elaborate get-well cards with drawings of the family, while little Louis simply wanted extra cuddles, somehow sensing that his mother needed gentleness. William's transformation during this period surprised even those closest to the family. The prince, who had always maintained careful emotional control in public, became fiercely protective and openly tender with his wife. He rearranged his own schedule, delegated responsibilities, and made it clear that Kate's recovery took precedence over everything else. His staff watched in admiration as he balanced his royal duties with his role as caregiver. The media attention following the postponed ceremony was intense but largely sympathetic. The public's genuine affection for Kate translated into an outpouring of support and well wishes that touched the royal couple deeply. Flowers and cards arrived by the thousands, creating a colorful display outside the palace gates that spoke to Kate's connection with people from all walks of life. As Kate's strength gradually returned, she and William began having deeper conversations about their approach to royal life. The collapse had served as a stark reminder that they were human beings first, royal figures second. They discussed setting better boundaries, learning to say no to certain obligations, and creating space for their family life amid the demands of the crown. The palace physician recommended a gradual return to public duties, starting with smaller, less demanding engagements. Kate initially resisted this cautious approach, eager to prove that she was fully recovered and capable of resuming her full schedule. But William's gentle insistence and the doctor's medical expertise eventually convinced her that patience would serve her better than rushing back too quickly. Their first public appearance together after the incident was carefully chosen, a small charity event for a cause close to Kate's heart. The crowd's warm reception and genuine concern for her well-being provided emotional healing alongside her physical recovery. Seeing how much people cared about her as a person, not just as a royal figure, helped Kate understand the broader impact of taking care of herself. William's handling of the crisis had earned him new respect from palace staff and royal observers alike. His quick thinking during the collapse, his unwavering support during recovery, and his willingness to challenge traditional expectations demonstrated leadership qualities that went beyond mere protocol. The future king had shown that protecting those he loved would always be his highest priority. The experience also strengthened Kate and William's partnership in ways they hadn't expected. Having faced a genuine crisis together, they discovered new depths of trust and communication. Kate learned to be more open about her struggles and limitations, while William developed even greater sensitivity to her needs and well-being. Their marriage emerged stronger and more honest than before. Palace protocols were quietly reviewed and modified following the incident. New procedures were put in place to monitor the health and stress levels of senior royals, ensuring that warning signs wouldn't be ignored in the future. The traditional show-must-go-on mentality was balanced with recognition that human well-being must always come first, regardless of ceremonial importance. Kate's recovery also sparked important conversations about the pressures faced by women in public life. Her willingness to be vulnerable about her struggles resonated with countless women who felt overwhelmed by their own responsibilities. Letters poured in from mothers, professionals, and caregivers who saw their own experiences reflected in Kate's story. The postponed state opening ceremony was eventually rescheduled for several weeks later. When the day arrived, Kate felt genuinely ready to participate, having taken the time needed for proper recovery. William remained watchful and protective, but there was a new confidence in their partnership that came from having weathered the storm together. As they walked into Westminster Hall for the rescheduled ceremony, the couple moved with a different energy than before. Kate's steps were sure and strong, but there was also a visible tenderness between them that spoke to their shared experience. William's protective presence was still evident, but it was balanced with respect for Kate's renewed strength and determination. The ceremony itself proceeded flawlessly, but both Kate and William carried with them the memory of that earlier day when everything had changed. The moment when she collapsed and he caught her had become a defining point in their relationship, proof that their partnership could withstand any challenge when they faced it together. In the months that followed, Kate's approach to royal duties reflected the lessons learned from her collapse and recovery. She became more selective about commitments, more attentive to her own needs, and more willing to ask for help when necessary. The perfectionism that had previously driven her was tempered with wisdom about the importance of sustainable effort over unsustainable heroics. William continued to demonstrate the protective instincts that had emerged so powerfully during the crisis. While he respected Kate's independence and strength, he also maintained a watchful presence that ensured her well-being remained a priority. Their public appearances showed a couple who had learned to balance duty with care, service with self-preservation. The children, too, had learned valuable lessons from watching their parents navigate this difficult period. They saw that strength could include vulnerability, that asking for help was brave rather than weak, and that taking care of each other was the most important duty of all. These lessons would serve them well as they grew into their own public roles. Looking back, Kate would later describe the collapse as one of the most frightening but ultimately transformative experiences of her royal career. It had stripped away illusions about invincibility and forced her to confront the human limitations that even princesses must acknowledge. But more importantly, it had shown her the depth of love and support that surrounded her, starting with the man who had refused to let her fall alone. The throne room where it all began continued to host important ceremonies, but for Kate and William, it would always hold special significance as the place where they learned that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from knowing that someone will always be there to catch you when you fall. Their love story had gained a new chapter, written not in royal protocol but in human compassion and unbreakable partnership.